Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge and I'm your host. I'm the author of 12 books, a CEO of 12 years, the founder of a startup set on data privacy, most importantly, an elite performance coach of over 18 years, having worked with athletes throughout Europe, the United States to Australia. Most excitingly, I am the world's leading scientist on coach and athlete performance, specifically behind how to develop a top 10 tennis ranking. My work includes everything from mitigating injuries to conditioning behaviors that set a player up long term for the long game towards a top 10 tennis ranking. I'm behind theories from the optimal performance theory, optimal behavior for optimal performance, the barrier breaker, the rule of transference to the golden rule. As has become custom, each episode we dive into the latest rankings and results on the WTA and ATP tours and deliver new data implications as shared in my latest release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, with over 70 episodes now to date. Today's insights and key topic plays its own role, like so many other episodes, in developing the player, parent to coach for that road ahead towards a top 10 tennis ranking. So, as always, buckle in and enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today. Look, as always, if you've been with us for some time now, thank you so much. You really know, I guess, where we've been, where we're going, and the change of pace that really has transpired over the last couple of weeks, or essentially the beginning of this season. If this is one of your first episodes and you're tuning into, I really would encourage you to track back 2 episodes, let's say between 50 to 60. There are some a little bit late, and also our blog posts essentially around that time that really showcase, I think, more precisely the catalyst. So what I mean by that, when we're really narrowing in on, say, the nitty-gritty, more of the context of one of my publications, so The Secrets to Optimal Performance Success. We're around halfway through The Secrets to Optimal Coaching Success. Before we took this, I think, deep dive essentially into active tournaments on the WTA and ATP tours to really draw out those additional key data implications to insights. And I promise we will get back to the later half of The Secrets to Optimal Coaching Success. But I mean, a lot of you are aware, if not now you are, that my latest release that came out just before Christmas, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, is really responsible for this change of pace, because it's opened up a lot of space, in a manner of speaking, to share direct implications, which we weren't essentially able to do last season, because it was under wraps, it was underway, it was being finalized, and ever since it has been released and out, it really has freed myself up personally to be able to share more, and also for those who are familiar with the work, to track back again in the book specifically, to look at, I think, key points of inferences, ones to really narrow in on, especially if you're really serious, not just about developing that top 10 tennis ranking. If you're familiar with AMA International, that's just one of many, I think, wins. And what I mean by that is really good things that can happen. So one, we know that how to develop that top 10 tennis ranking. Second, and I think most importantly with that, is how to win that maiden Grand Slam championship. And following that is really how to win additional Grand Slam championships. So yes, you are hearing that correctly, that we really have the data that pinpoints multiple championship wins, which means we have really key insights, data, connotations, implications, extrapolations, all of, I think, those buzzwords when we're looking at the scientific investigations that really have unfolded over the last 12 plus years now, of how to win multiple players from the likes of Serena, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. One of my more recent blog posts that's just come out, it was really, I think, highlighting the importance and the power of the data being shaped around potentially the most successful time in sporting history in respect to tennis, when we had essentially 4 players to win 20 Grand Slams or more. That's never happened in the history of our sport before, but how all of those players have also feeded into these specific data implications. But it's not just them. There are countless others as well. And really, I think the differences, and that's what's incredibly powerful, and being able to differentiate on a micro and macro scale, when essentially we're looking at what really separates the top 10 from the top 20 and so forth. I won't repeat myself too much, because I really dived into varying, let's say, implications in early episodes, and that's why I think each and every episode I really do encourage the newcomers to at least pick up a handful of our prior episodes around, prior to say 60 to 50, even the early episodes around, even if it was 20, 30 plus. By all means, dive into, our first 10, 20 episodes. I think it'll be very interesting. I haven't even been game, in all fairness, to track back there, because I think the flow was more regimented, and I'm happy to confess that I was somewhat filled with nerves. It was very daunting to launch beyond top 10 tennis, which now how far we've come, it does sound a little bit silly, but for all of you out there, we all have, I think, different things that make us a little bit unsure, and I'm so glad that I can say that I actually did build beyond top 10 tennis, because irrespective of where you are in the world, where you're listening, you're not alone. We have listeners from all over the globe, which is incredibly exciting. But to today's episode, it's about Miami. We all know that the Miami Open is underway. Both tours are partaking in it. Last episode, we wrapped up Indian Wells, Charleston to the very beginning of Miami, which really looked at half of the first round, so day 1 for the women's draw, and the men's draw was getting underway the following day. So we're really going to look at the complete what's happened on the ATP tour for their draw until now, so to almost towards the round of 16, and the WTA, they're just wrapping up the round of 16. Literally, Swiatek just completed her match, and oh my goodness for that result. So we will get to that later. But there are no ranking implications or additional insights this week, because again, Miami is tracked over just shy of that fortnight. So there are no new ranking updates because of that. So I really wanted to dive in, let's say, from the very beginning, which is essentially we're looking at the other half on the WTA tour to begin with. So we will do the WTA tour before switching over to the ATP tour. So we are still on the first round, so 128 that we're looking at, but the other half. So I really would, if you are interested in that other half, just listen to last week's episode to get, I guess, the complete the real, I think, data implications from, I guess, those other 64 matches that unfolded. Although, in all fairness, the draw is not that big in the earlier rounds, because oh my goodness, there were quite a number of buys. All right, as we get in, okay, Osaka Cocchiaretto. This actually was quite tricky because Cocchiaretto has actually been quite solid this season for her ranking. So Osaka coming out with 3 and 4 actually was a very good match in performance from Naomi, and it's going to be very interesting to see how far she tracks. I know a lot of you know the results, but let's keep in mind that we're going to look at the first round and move our way through so we can look at different implications at that point in time. All right, Hunter Trevisan. Trevisan retired down 3-love in the second, but that's actually a very good win for Storm Hunter, an Aussie. Recall earlier this season she did get, or I think last season she also finished #1 in the world in doubles. Singles isn't necessarily her forte. However, she really has been building, I think, especially those earlier rounds this season, and she's even had some later round performances, which is really good for Hunter. Volonyets Kenin. Volonyets with the win in 3 sets. Really looking for Kenin to find her groove again. We know she peaked very early. I think she was around 20, 21 years of age when she won the Australian Open. Now, I think that's around 4 to 5 years ago now. She definitely has it in her, but this is where those 7 keys and the 8th key comes in. We'll get more to that later. Vekic over Pliskova. That was a very good win, 3 sets. Pliskova, she has had a very good start to the season. Vekic, however, she's sitting around 30 in the world. I think it's around 33, 34, roughly. A very good win. But we've touched on also blog posts and previous episodes that plateau, also on AMA International, where players hover around 40, 30, even 20 in the world, and it's almost like they stagnate, which isn't the nicest word, but their performance has reached a peak and it's almost stuck. They don't know how to move beyond that. And that's again where those 7 keys come into play. So we know Vekic definitely has a grasp of, for example, a good 2 to 3 keys. But to get her to track closer towards the top 20 and ascend towards the top 10, this is a prime example of needing to really ascertain an additional 3 keys before those 7 keys nudge her closer towards the top 10. That 8th key pushes her all the way. All right, Podoroska over Kruger in straight sets. Tomova over Korpach, straight sets. Rus over Sorobes Tormo. Rus and both Sorobes Tormo have had relatively good start this season. They're not seeded, but both of these players have been steady in those earlier rounds. So that's actually a bit interesting to, I think, keep an eye on. Rogers over Vitova, 3 sets. Collins over Pera, 3 sets. Look at this, 3-6, 6-1, 6-1. We know, and I've said it over and over again, Collins is top 20 quality, her level of play. And even though she's not seeded, she definitely deserves for that to be the case. All right, Arakina over Maria, straight sets. Lou over Martic. Remember, Martic once upon a time was top 30. Not the case at the moment. So it's very interesting when you see a player peak and then they regress, and they're obviously still around. And I'm here to say, all you need is those elusive keys. Maybe you still have 1, 2, and you've lost track of those 3 to 4 to 5. That's what you need. It is possible to track back and closer towards top 30, top 20, and eventually top 10. Stevens over Kerber. This was a very impressive first round performance. 6-2, 6-3 to Kerber. I was expecting Kerber to really take that to 3 and potentially with the win, given her performance Indian Wells and so far this season. However, Stevens has been actually quite solid. Her ranking has been tracking, let's say, a bit more steadily, even only just minutely in contrast, I think, to Kerber over the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks. Ondrieva fell to Avanesian. Now, this is actually a little bit interesting because 3 sets, and remember, I think it was Erica, she went through all the way through qualifying, but also in Indian Wells, falling at that initial hurdle, but she has been making inroads, which is really important. Timofeeva over Gracheva, straight sets. Bozuka fell to Zhu, straight sets. And Georgie over French, straight sets. Okay, let's move over to the round of 64. Wang over Kudermetova, straight sets. Zheng, straight sets over Siniakova. Now, remember, Zheng, finalist at the Australian Open. My apologies for the pronunciation because I'm quite confident that is incorrect of how I'm pronouncing that, so I do apologise. However, Siniakova retired in that 3rd set when it was 1 set apiece. Now, remember or recall those markers I've touched on, that Zheng is more likely to regress outside the top 10 because her results have not been aligning with that ranking. Fortunately for her, but also unfortunately, a little bit of a balancing act here because she has all those points from the Australian Open. She is still inside comfortably the top 10, but her level of performance, her rate of susceptibility against fellow players is increasingly high. It's something to be very, very mindful of. Ostapenko, Seigman. Seigman's had a relatively solid season, but Ostapenko with the win. We know she's been one of the favourites this season. Yastremska over Seville, straight sets. Very good win for her. Keys over Schneider. Now, Schneider, who took out Venus in that first round, Schneider's already got a title under her belt this season. Very good win for Keys. Granted that she is the 17th seed, top 20 player, but that would not have been easy at all. Okay, Puntintseva, she has tracked in the ranking. She's on a very big ranking progressions. That's a 3-set win over Samsonova. But remember that she has been tracking. Very important. Sakari back inside the top 10 with a win, straight sets over Yuan, especially over her Indian Wells performance, making the finals. Very good win for her. It is great to have Sakari back playing top 10 tennis. Kalinina over Wozniacki, 3 sets. I'm very happy with this. Now, I'm not going to normally, and I very rarely touch on, I think, the other. And what I mean is, let's say, the other news external to the results on court. Unfortunately, Wozniacki did make some comments that were directed at Halep and Halep's comeback. We all know Halep was cleared. It was not intentional doping, and the CAS cleared her, allowed her to play. Badosa obviously took her down 3 sets in the first round. Unfortunately, Wozniacki did make some unpleasant remarks, which is really disheartening considering the amount of wild cards Wozniacki has been granted this season. And let's remember, she got to number 1 in the world without even winning a Grand Slam. And that is not how top 10 players are made, number 1 players are made. Grand Slam champions, now we want you towards that top 5 or really edging closer. And I think she came along on tour at a time where the peak was not as it is today, and she has unfortunately made some remarks about the quality of play now compared to say when she was active, and I really have to disagree with that, and I would encourage her to look at the data there, because each and every player, irrespective if you're on the WTA and ATP tour, you are deserving to be there. You've done the hard work, you deserve to be there. And if unfortunately a player in Halep's case has fought doggedly hard to clear their name, I'd really love to see other players supportive of that when the truth prevails, opposed to punishing them. That's really upsetting. All right, back to the action. Kalinskaya over Wang, very good win, 2-2. Now remember, Kalinskaya from the Australian Open, she really has been on the radar this season. She has been tracking inside or closer towards the top 20, the 22nd seed. Serenko fell to Minin, straight straight sets. Haddad Maia, a very good win over Parry in 3 sets. Townsend came through qualifying over Mertens straight sets, a very good win, especially with Mertens being the 25th seed. Bulter over Fruhvirtova, 7-6-1 love. And now that was a retirement in that second set. So that was actually very tough for Bulter. Now remember, Bulter's coming off that very good championship, or that title in San Diego. All right, the other half of the round of 64, so the second round. Here we go. Garcia over Tomova, 6-1, 5-2. That is a shame that retirement was just 1 game short, but that's a very good win for Garcia. She's on the radar at the moment because we're really looking at these peak performance indicators, and she's starting to find that groove again. Now, some players peak consistently, and that's why they're inside the top 10. They understand the 7 keys and then that power of the 8th key if they're going on to win Grand Slams, Swiatek, Gauff, Rybakina, for example. However, we have other players who have those peak performances and they fall off. Garcia has been one of them, so is one to watch. However, we really want to favour that consistency, which brings me to the likes of, say, Paolini, how she's been tracking this season from the Australian Open, winning, I think it was Abu Dhabi or Qatar. I want to say Abu Dhabi. And she had a really good result, and she's kept on going. So round of 64, Paolini over Wozniacki, straight sets, but it was tough. 7-6, 7-5. Gauff over Podoroska, straight sets. Badosa, Sabalenka. I think it goes without saying, condolences for Sabalenka. And we know what's happened off court. However, this is a live episode, and I really want to emphasize here on Sabalenka's performance mentally, emotionally, physically, to get that win over Badosa. 4-3, and we know these two are the best of friends off court. That's a tough one, but to get that win is a very big one for Sabalenka. All right, Kasatkina over Liu, 6 love, 1 love, then Liu retired. Kasatkina has been tracking closer towards the top 10. She is the 10th seed. I'm not too sure at this stage what top 10 player is not playing. I just do not have that in front of me, but this is very good for her. Even though we're only talking second round, Kasatkina is on the brink of becoming a barrier breaker within the next 2 to 4 weeks, especially with this level of play. Rus did fall to Dodin in the second round in 3 sets. Vekic fell to Alexandrova 6-3, 6-4. Now, let's pay attention here. Alexandrova, 14th seed. She has been tracking really steadily in the rankings, so not rapid fire, very progressive. She has been holding her own. Vekic, though, is no easy opponent to get that win against. So there was a very good one, despite, let's say, that ranking difference there. Stevens fell to Cirstea, 6-2, 6-1. Cirstea, she's inside the top 20. She's having a very good season. She's been able to take very solid scalps from players closer towards the top 10, if not inside the top 10. So if Cirstea keeps up this level of play, she will track closer, let's say, towards that 15 mark. At this stage, I will not point her to become a barrier breaker, but she's definitely in contention to nudge closer towards the top 10 and to really put up a bit of a challenge. Pavlyuchenkova, straight sets over Rogers. Hunter did fall to Navarro, and Navarro is on a high after breaking into the top 20 last week, 4-3. Wow. Okay, now round of 32. So the third round, Kalinskaya, Ostapenko. This is huge. We know Kalinskaya is on the radar. I've been talking about her all season so far, alongside Paolini and Kostyuk and the others that really held their own at the Australian Open. You know who they are, and I will touch on them shortly. But to get 6-3, 6-1 over Ostapenko, that one of the barrier breakers so far this season, one of the informed players this season, is a very good win. Bulter over Haddad Maia, 2-3. That is an absolutely exceptional win for Katie. Haddad Maia, former top 10. She's on the cusp of becoming a top 10 again, waiting for, I guess, that fluctuation, that player to regress. A very good result. Putintseva over Minen, 3 sets. Putintseva, what I said earlier, she has been tracking. Kalinina over Sabalenka, 3 sets. Now, Kalinina is the 32nd seed. She has been making inroads this season. Let's say her countrywomen, Kostyuk and Yastremska, really peaked at the Australian Open, and Svitolina as well. So way to go, Ukraine and Ukrainian tennis. And Kalinina is now right up there. To get this win over Sabalenka has to be one of the best wins, if not the best, of her career. However, we all know Sabalenka and what she's dealing with would not have been in, let's say, that peak optimal state, but all credit to Kalinina. Townsend fell to Rybakina, 3 sets, but third round, that is a very good result for Townsend, coming through qualifying and to get the second set in a tiebreak off Rybakina. That's actually a very good performance. Wang and Keys got the win, 6-4, 7-6. Avanyasen over Jabeur in 3 sets. Now this is somewhat, let's say, concerning. Jabeur are a bye first round, but Jabeur has been falling early on in these events. Because of her ranking points, she's still inside the top 10. But if she did not have, or if, my apologies, Jabeur had points to defend, in this respect, she would be regressing a part of that 2% and definitely is more vulnerable and is part of that 2% who will potentially regress this season outside the top 10. And I'm sure a lot of you are like me. We are huge fans of Jabeur and her game, but her metrics this season, the data is just not on her side, and these results are not helping her case. Sakari over Yastremska, a very good win, especially what I've just touched on with Yastremska's performance this season, but 7-5, 6-4, so well done to Sakari. Swiatek over Georgie, 1-1. This one, very big. I think Osaka's biggest win since she's come back over Svitolina, 6-2, 7-6. Svitolina, she's in form. Each and one of you know, I think if you have been listening for some time, big fan of Svitolina's game. When she was ranked inside the top 10, she was arguably one of the most successful players to hold on to her top 10 ranking over, I think it was a good 7-8 year time span. She was that consistent. So we're looking in parallels with Serena at that time. Even though Svitolina has not won a Grand Slam, she was making round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals consistently like any other player. Serena was going on to win the Slam, but Svitolina, she was there. I'm really hoping, looking forward to, because of that, seeing Svitolina rejoin the top 10. She definitely has that capacity again. But look, Naomi has definitely found some form from, let's say, before she took time away, because 6-2 first set over Svitolina is absolutely solid. Second set, 7-6, wow. But that really shows Osaka is tracking towards playing, let's say, top 20 tennis. Zheng Azarenka. Now, remember the third round, what I just said a short time ago about Zheng, big inside the top 10, Australian Open finalist, but her susceptibilities, and Azarenka 6-4, 7-5 with the win. Zheng has not been outperformed. The same applies for Indian Wells. So this is really good for Azarenka to get that win over a top 10 player. But this is really underscoring Zheng alongside, say, Jabeur. But Jabeur has a number of Grand Slam finals now to her name. Zheng, obviously, with that one, with a newly crowned top 10 player, is highly susceptible to regressing outside the top 10. Again, those points, we're really looking, it's very easy for the two of them to be pushed further and closer to the brink of regressing outside that key ranking range. Very good for Azarenka. Would love to see Azarenka track closer towards and inside the top 20 again. Remember, it was only a few seasons ago that Azarenka made the US Open Finals. Did not get that win, but she was able to go all the way. All right, Noskova, another big favourite from the Australian Open, over Timofeyeva, straight sets. Collins over Potapova, 30th seed, and Collins, no, she's not seeded, but she's definitely top 20 with that win. Fernandez over Arango, straight sets. Pegula with a very good win over Zhu. 4-1 in that second set with Zhu retiring. Okay, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty end of it, towards where the Miami Open is today at this stage. So third round, Swiatek Noskova. Now recall the Australian Open. These two have met. I'm pretty sure it was in Indian Wells as well. And also, I think this season they've played at least 2 to 3 times, and this maybe was their fourth. But Noskova got that first set 7-6 over Swiatek, 6-4, 6-4. That has to be the tightest scoreline between these two. I'm pretty sure, but that's a very good performance from Noskova. Very dangerous, though Swiatek has been in form. I will also say, though, I think Swiatek is slightly lagging, which it breaks me almost to say, but she has had a back-to-back jam season because she's had so many wins in a really good way. Very successful, my apologies, the last, say, 8 weeks, and hasn't had that much time off since the Australian Open. Sabalenka has, in that respect. Swiatek really has been living up to that number 1 status with a number of those wins. So I think the time's coming for needing to come up for some air. All right, Collins with the win over Evantian, 1 and 2. That's a very big win. Garcia over Osaka, 7-6, 7-5. Very good win for Garcia. I was almost expecting Osaka to go all the way, but look how close that is. 7-6 against 6-4. Naomi, she is coming because that's 2 very solid wins. She's just had Svitolina. Garcia, she's just fallen short, but she is tracking. And I know she's planning to peak later on this season, and I have to say she is on track. She is looking good. Fernandez, Pegula, that's a very good win for Pegula. She hasn't had that, let's say, very big win so far this season, so I'm very happy for Pegula with this win over Fernandez. Fernandez has been playing pretty good so far this season. However, Pegula, she's 5 in the world, and I really wanted to go deep this tournament to live up to, I think, that number 5 ranking. Pavlyuchenkova fell to Alexandrova, 4-6-4, 3-6, 6-3. Pay attention here. Pavlyuchenkova has been in form. 3 sets. Alexandrova, she is in form, and you know what's coming next. Gauff over Dodin, 4 and 6 love. Solid, so wait for what's next. Paolini did fall to Navarro, which is a little bit surprising here. 3rd set was 6 love. Paolini is on a rankings high. Navarro as well. However, Paolini is favoured ahead of Navarro, but Navarro with that win. But with that 3rd set being 6 love, oh my goodness, is Navarro having the last 2 to 3 weeks the best time of her life. Okay, then we got Sersteya with a win over Kasatkina, 7-5, 6-2. So very good for Sersteya, but the flag so much here is Kasatkina when we're looking for her to progress inside the top 10. So to become a barrier breaker, to fall short in the 3rd round is not what we're looking for. That's not the metrics that support a player progressing towards a top 10 tennis ranking and staying, which means potentially if Kasatkina does become a barrier breaker, breaks into the top 10, if these results continue, there's a higher chance for her to regress. So it's a very different story when we're looking at metrics from, say, Ostapenko breaking to the top 10 to Kasatkina, who's on the brink, when we're looking at their results this season. So we're looking again at those micro discrepancies, which I've really touched on in the What Is Your Game Missing series, and elaborated on, let's say, thereafter. But that's, I think, the biggest series to understand, not the 7 keys and the 8 key that comes later, but the What Is Your Game Missing series. So that's what is your game missing, what is your game missing now, and what is your game missing to win. Pulls apart all of these players. There's literally probably 100 players cumulatively, probably more, that have been broken down, and I show you in real time how to look at the data, how to look at their metrics, look at the gaps in their games. And so if you're one of those players that is featured in those books, the answer's there. I've literally done the work for you to say if you're a top 20 player inside the last, let's say, 6 years, there's a very good chance the work's there, and it's showing you what you need to do. Swiatek is there, for example, and it pinpointed her performance towards a top 10 and then towards a Grand Slam before it even happened. Osaka's there as well, and I think it happened before her last Grand Slam. Pavlyuchenkova is in there, Pegula's in there, Kasatkina's in there, Sustay's in there, Gauff's in there. Gauff, so much so, when she was tracking towards the top 10, but was not quite ready for the Grand Slam. So that whole series even predicted Gauff's rise to become a Grand Slam champion beforehand, and it literally hit the mark on the money within respect to the season, that she had to wait just a little bit longer. So that's how powerful that series is. All right, the last day, we are up to the round of 16 WTA Tour, and the match that just wrapped up before we started recording today was Swiatek and Alexandrova. Alexandrova with what a win over Swiatek. Round of 16, got the 6-4, 6-2. Really important to remember though, Swiatek, she's made it to the round of 16. It was not an early exit. We're looking at round of 16 is a good result. The same applies for Gauff, who's fallen to Garcia in 3 sets. That is very surprising as well. However, we know Garcia has been peaking, so it's not as surprising. Alexandrova with her earlier round wins, not as surprising. And also when we're looking at the rankings, how she's really been creeping up there very steadily. These 2 players and these 2 matches respectively are very interesting, and they offer new data insights on both, let's say, Alexandrova and Garcia, their new peak performances, those levels, but also Swiatek, how she's slightly off her game because she's been overloaded, I'm going to say now, this season. She hasn't had enough rest, let's say, over the last 8 weeks, and it's taken its toll here. However, she has been able to get to the round of 16. Same with Gauff. However, Gauff has not been tracking as deep in tournaments this season. That's why it's very different from Swiatek in this respect. Garcia, however, has been starting to peak, which means that's why Gauff fell in 3. But let's not be mistaken, Gauff's performance going off her US Open win, she's still there. She's still number 3 in the world, and there's a reason for that. So it's a very good win for Garcia. Putintseva, from what I've said earlier as well, 6-4, 7-6 over Kalinina. So that's a very good win for Putintseva, especially with her ranking tracking. It's been progressing, so it will continue to progress, which is a very good sign. And how about this one? Pegula over Navarro, 7-6, 6-3. This is a very good win for Pegula, what we were waiting for. Round of 16, Pegula's showing now with this result. Navarro was on a high here. Why she is number 5 in the world. Potentially, definitely favoured now, Pegula, to go all the way. That would really be very positive to see alongside Sakari, who did get the walkover in the round of 16 over Kalinskaya. She did fall unwell. Azarenka with a win over Bulta. very good for Azarenka. I love this. 7-5, 6-1. And then we've got Collins with the win over Cestaya, 6-3, 6-2. And you've heard me say it over and over again. Collins, she's there. She's definitely top 20 despite not being seeded. And then you've got Rybakina over Keys, 6-3, 7-5. What I love about this round of 16, I absolutely love, is that all of these players, bar 2, are seeded. And the 2 players who are not seeded, we know Collins is top 20, not seeded, and Putintseva, who has been tracking. But it really offers, I think, those interesting key insights, because we've got the round of 16, which means 32 players here, but obviously all 32 are not here. That is not the case, and that's what's really interesting. But I think to clarify, we're looking at half of that. So 16, not the 32. That's my apologies there. But when we're looking at the seedings, the 32 seeds, the rankings, which means if we're getting down to the 16 of that, ideally you want to see the top 16 players, all those inside the top 32. If we're looking at a 50-50 balance here, that a 32 seed could potentially overcome that 16th seed, which when we're looking at rankings and results isn't necessarily should be happening, but it really, I think, offers new insights on a player's peak performance if they're capable. Because when we're just looking at the round of 16 here, Alexandrova is seeded over Swiatek, as in she's 14 to that 1. Garcia's 23 to the 3 to Gorf. Putintseva is not seeded over Kalinina, 32. Sakari, she's 8. However, Kalinskaya, 22, that was a walkover. Azarenka, 27 over 24. However, Pegula is the 5 over the 20. So stay at 19. Collins not being seeded, and Rybakina is the exception, 4 over 17. Only 2 players, Pegula and Rybakina, got the wins over players who were seeded, let's say, lower than them. All of those other matches are players who were seeded beyond them, who were not the favourite to win, got the win. And that's what's really interesting, especially when we go back to back from, say, Indian Wells to Miami, and we're looking at those peak performance indicators, who's been able to reach a performance plateau, who's able to maintain their baseline, and who's more readily going to succumb. All right, that is a lot. That really wraps up the WTA Tour. So it's time to switch on over to the ATP Tour. And now this is a big one, because we're going to start from the first rounds and go all the way up to today. However, we do have a bye. So Alcaraz had the bye first round. Vukic fell to Carabella's Baena, straight sets. Monfils over Lajovic, straight sets. Thompson with the bye. Mazzetti with the bye. Schwartzman, he qualified through, fell to Safulin, 2 and 4. Then we got Landa Lunci, wildcard over Muna, 3 sets. We've got a couple of buys going on there. Tableau, a very good win over Nakashima, who qualified all the way through but then fell in 3. Russavori, now he's been a name thrown around so far this season, but he did fall in 3 to Hanfman. Going past a couple of buys here. Navarro, the qualifier, fell to Bautista Agut, another qualifier, straight sets. Shevchenko with a win over Galan. Now we've got Felix. He did get a win over the Aussie Walton, who qualified at straight sets. Evans over Sonegro, 3 sets. Trying to go pretty quick through this first round. Look at this. Kei Nishikori is back. He got a wild card, and I think this was really kept on the down low, under the radar, but it's so good to see him back in action. He did fall, however, to Offner, 3 and 4. I think, like Halep, to see her back in action, exceptional. To see Nishikori back in action is incredibly exciting, because dare I say, he has been out for a number of years now. To see his level of play reach a peak performance again will be absolutely sensational. Nishikori, if you are listening, head on over to AIM International. Please give me a call, because I am more than happy to help you. Because to see him back in action, I think is incredible for tennis universally in a really good way. Jiri over Wong, straight sets. Kwon over Muller, straight sets. Altama over Mayo, straight sets. And then we've got Popper in a very good win over Diaz Acosta, straight sets. Marazin over Kovacic, straight sets. Keep an eye on Marazin. A number of buys. Van Ash over Kotov. Shang over Keshmanovic, 3 sets. That was tough. 7-6, 4-6, 7-6. We're wrapping up the first round here. Draper over Daniel, straight sets. See both Wild over Borges, straights. Van der Schulp over Rinky, straights. Copa over Giron in straight sets. Kaboli over Nishioka, 3 sets there, the lucky loser. Fuchsovic over Purcell. Then we've got Macaque. Eye on Macaque as well here, over Blanche, the US wildcard, 4-2. Murray over Berrettini. Look at these 3 sets for Murray. Both of them former top 10 players. Berrettini made the final, I think it was Wimbledon a number of years ago now, but to see them both in action, Berrettini, his ranking we know has regressed somewhat the last, let's say, 2 seasons. Murray's still holding his own. To get that win over Berrettini, 3 sets, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4 is very solid. All right, the last couple of ones now. Naldi over Phils, straight sets. This one's a good one. Shapovalov over Darderi, 3 sets. Very good win for Dennis, because he has been working on tracking back. Dennis was a top 10 player, even if not briefly. So it's really good to see him back here. And again, I'd love to see him track close towards the top 20, at least get inside the top 50 to begin with, because we know what he's capable of. The last couple of ones here, Dam over Zhang, 7-6, 7-6. O'Connell over Kopriva in straight sets. Michelson over Klein, and Vasori over Kachin, both straight sets. All right, this brings us now to the round of 64, and we've got it jam-packed now, so hold on. Alcaraz, Caballas, Cabina, 6-2, 6-1, that is brutal. Monfils over Thompson. Thompson has been in form this season. A very good win for Monfils, 7-6, 6-1, 6-2. Mazzetti, recall a couple of episodes when I touched on Mazzetti's ranking, but really his potential, what he's capable of, and really wasn't living up to that ranking and his capacity at this stage. A very good win in the second round over Safulin, 7-5, 6-1. Shelton over Landell, straight sets. Dimitrov, Tabilo, a very good win, 6-7, 7-6, 6-2. Hanfin over Manarino. Now, Manarino has been playing very well this season. So for Hackman to get that win over the 19th seed in 3 is very good. Korda over Bautista, a good 3 sets. Herkax over Shevchenko, 3 sets. Zverev over Felix, Ogor Alisame, 6-2, 6-4. That is tough for Felix, because I know he's working on coming back, but a very good win for Zverev, another former top 10 player. Eubanks over Evans. Now, Eubanks made a bit of noise. I think it was, if not last US Open, the one before that. He's made his ranking up to, well, he's seeded 31, but his performance really hasn't been living up to those expectations. To get this win over Dan Evans at 7-6, 3-6, 7-6, that's a very good performance from Chris Eubanks. Serenunlo over Offner in 3 sets. Kakanakov over Jury, straight sets. Dimonor over Kwon, straight sets. Struff, Altima, Poprin, Lekeka, both straight sets. Now this one, remember I just said a moment ago, Marathon, to be mindful of his results so far in Miami over Rune, 6-1, 6-1. That is absolutely brutal. And I tell you what, I've been looking forward to today's episode to shed, I think, a bit of light on this. Rune, he's ranked 6 in the world, seeded 6. Has his performance or his performances been living up to that ranking? Absolutely not. He has had a lot of coaching shuffles so far this season. He's just taken on a new coach. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions about, I think, that coach, Halep's former coach. I won't go into that. I've previously gone into that, but let it be known that there's a lot of, I think, fallacies around that. And this ranking or this result really goes to show that. 6-1, 6-1 down to Marathon with that win over Rune really, I think, showcases we know it's not Rune's game. It is the coaching side that is not gelling, that is not right yet. Maybe we will see that in the future, but let's keep in mind that if you are a coach and you take on board a top 10 player, you are not responsible for getting him that top 10 ranking. You're going to help him progress, but let's not say that that was you doing it. That's the same with Halep. Halep was already a Grand Slam champion. That coach did not get her to win Grand Slams. That was another coach. Same with Serena. She was already winning Grand Slams. That's something really important to be mindful of. Other coaches, Wim Fissett, for example, got players to the top 10 and to win Grand Slams. Darren Cahill, the same, to do the same with a number of players. That's what we're looking for. So Rune, I'm somewhat concerned of this. He's definitely lacking a number of those keys despite being ranked inside the top 10. It's not quite right. But all credit here to Morozan. And keep in mind, this is the second round. So well done to Morozan. Run over Van Ash, 3 sets. That was a tough one. 7-6, 1-6, 6-1. Davidovich Fokina over Shank. Jarry over Draper, 2 sets and 3 sets. Look, Jarry and Draper, 7-6, 4-6, 7-6. A couple of tie breaks there. Saboth Wild qualified. Look at this, a very good win over Fritz, 6-3, 6-4. I think it was last season or the one prior. Fritz did win Indian Wells. He was on that peak performance, tracking really well. But at the beginning of this season, he regressed outside the top 10. Then he progressed back inside the top 10. He's now back outside the top 10. And Seaboth Wild, he qualified through. He's been having a good season despite needing to qualify. But Fritz, he has been slightly regressing again. We're looking for players who can maintain that baseline, and Fritz's baseline does fluctuate. That said, he is a danger on any given day, but when we're looking at winning Grand Slams, finding that baseline that is also a peak performance is absolutely pivotal. Humbert, very good season so far. Straight sets win over Van der Schulp. Koper over Baez, straight sets. Norrie over Kaboli in 3 sets. Fuchsovich fell to Medvedev, straight sets. And how about this? Makak over Rublev, 4-4. Now remember, in earlier episodes we have highlighted Makak's, my apologies, progressions this season. So that's actually a very good win for Makak. But given his, let's say, his mechanics that I've previously touched on, it's not as surprising. Though to get a win over Rublev is exceptional. Murray, a very good win over Echeverry, 7-6, 6-3. Echeverry is the 29th seed. That has to be one of Murray's best wins in some time. Analdi, very good win over Bublik, 4-1. And how about this? Shapovalov got the win over Tsitsipas, 2-4. That's what we've been waiting for. Really underscores Shapovalov's capacity to toe the line with the top 10. We just need that consistency back to get him to track closer towards that key ranking range. However, despite Tsitsipas being seeded 10 and with his ranking the same, he has not been playing, let's say, the level of play that he was, say, 2 to 3 seasons prior. Dam over Paul, 4-6-2-1, which means Paul would have retired there, though Paul's had a very good start, 13th seed. He has been progressing in the rankings, so it's a little bit surprising here. Something obviously is not quite right, but Paul did win that first set, but Dam got the win. Tiafoe fell to O'Connell, 7-5, 7-6. Tiafoe also has not been tracking this season, and not how we would like to see him, so a very good win for O'Connell. Greekenspor over Mitchelson, 3 sets. Sinner, a very good win over Visoria, qualifier in straight sets. All right, that was a lot. Now we are on to the third round now, and let's say it's halfway through. The rest of the third round will unfold tomorrow. So we're going to wrap up on so half of the third round that has been underway or wrapped up today, which means we've got Hercax with a very good win over Quarter, 7-6, 6-7, 6-3. That's an exceptional result for Quarter. Well done to Hercax to get that win. Now we've got Zverev over Eubanks, 7-6, 6-3. A very good win for Zverev, but for Eubanks to hold his own for that first set is very solid. This is what I like seeing despite the scoreline. If you're a player seated around where Eubanks is, so 31, and you're able to hold the line, so toe that line with a top 10 player, you know your capacity. However, your baseline's not full. It's fluctuating. So your peak performance, it's not steady. You could only maintain or withhold that level of play for so long. And that's what differentiates a top 10 player from those outside. It's how long can you hold that level of play for? Because I guarantee you a top 10 player will hold it all day. And that is a very big differentiator. If you want to learn to hold that peak performance all day long, all tournament long, you need the 8 keys. That's why it's my latest release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, the power of the 8th key. That is the, let's say, the subheading. That's where the 8th key has come from. It's to amplify your game. And we know the difference here. And if you really solidify that into your game, Grand Slams await. All right, Kakanakov over Seralundo, 3 sets, although that third set was 7-6. Dimonor over Struff, 7-6, 6-4. Marazin got a very good win over Poprin in straight sets. Rudd over Davidovich Fokina. Jarry, 3 sets over Saboth Wild. Humbert fell to Koper in 3. And Medvedev, a very good win over Norrie, 7-5, 6-1. And how about this? Macaque, he has been tracking. Very good win over Murray. But look at the scoreline. 5-7, 7-5, 7-6. And I believe when I read up about it, this match went for a good almost around 3 hours, maybe a bit longer. So good on Murray. He is hanging in there. But we know Macaque is part of that, let's say, next gen who has been flagged. And even though, let's just say, his results this season are incredibly positive, and he's one of a few players not seeded that are on the radar because of their mechanics. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Macaque tracks, especially heading up towards Roland Garros, or if he regresses. Given the surface differences, potentially it could go either way. But he should keep tracking if he is equipped with set technical parameters. But if it's only let's say a fluctuation, we will see that regression. So we don't have enough data at this stage to pinpoint that level of maintenance that we really want to see. But Murray, we know that's there. And this is actually a very good, big positive in his favour. Analdi. Now, Analdi has been pulling out those firecracker wins this season. So over Shapovalov, 6-3, 7-6. To some, it might not sound as an exceptional win, but given Shapovalov's background, even though his ranking has progressed, that's a very solid win for Analdi. O'Connell over Dam, 7-6, 7-6. That's a very good win. And then to wrap up this half of the third round, Sinner 3 sets over Grikenspor, 5-7, 7-5, 6-1. That has to be the most I think Sinner has been tested for quite some time. Let's say despite, his loss to Alcaraz at Indian Wells, though 3 sets here with the win over Grikenspor is very good. Okay, so that really wraps up Miami, or where we are at this point in time. We are halfway through the third round for the ATP Tour, and we're up to, or we finalized the round of 16 for the WTA Tour, which means next week we're going to be able to track from round of 16 towards the finals, and we'll get to touch on the quarterfinals through the finals on the WTA Tour. So that's a lot of tennis coming your way next week, but we will also have a crossover of some of the other events that are getting underway this week. But Miami is front and center. And look, today's episode, we've covered so many matches. I think just off the top of my head, we have to have touched on at least 150 matches, if not more, which means double that in respect to players. So that is actually, today's episode has been jam-packed. No ranking insights. We have delivered results, key results from top 10 players, different, I think, player, how their players are tracking, individual data implications from what's been happening from key top 10 players, why they have not been performing, but also a number of other players, whether they are on the radar, they've been noteworthy this season to really keep an eye on, and plus some newcomers that we're also keeping an eye on, but also those players sitting around 30, if they are currently on a plateau, so that remember or recall that stagnated performance and what they need to do to track forwards. And I really want to sum today's episode up on the 7 keys, the power of the 8th key, and to really dive into early episodes for those key differentiators and what you really need. So the power of the 8th key to get you all the way. And now is, if not the best time, to start integrating more of those keys. Get your hands on the 7 keys to optimize your life, but also the 8th key. So that's unveiled in my new release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, the power of the 8th key. And if you use those 2 books in tandem, especially if you've reached the round of 16 or further, that's what you need to track even further. Quarterfinals, semifinals, getting the win, because I can guarantee you the player who will walk away with the win at Miami will have integrated the 7 keys into their game. The only differentiator is that we want that 8th key for those Grand Slam wins to be able to replicate and to consistently go all the way. And we know Swiatek showed us that, and Alcaraz showed us that at Indian Wells. So Miami is going to show us some more. It's going to add to the data and really deliver even more so, especially when we're really pinpointing now, because let's say we're a quarter of the way into the season on who's next to track towards that top 10 tennis ranking. thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you enjoyed, I think, those, let's say that deep dive into those results for Miami today. There was a lot to cover, especially with varying data implications and let's say a new take. So today's episode was filled with a couple of pauses just to get me thinking about how I can share, I think, these additional insights, implications in new ways that will potentially that I haven't yet touched on to really turn over a new leaf. Look, to grab your copy of my new release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, you can find that on AMA International or Amazon, irrespective where you're based in the world. For any comments or questions, head on over to AMA International or Topic Thread, that social platform set on data privacy. To interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, head on over to Twitter, Instagram or YouTube. To catch up on our blogs, head on over to AMA International and look for our blog tab, or head on over to Medium. And as always, I'll leave all the links in the episode notes. For something different, head on over to Pink Octopus Books. That's where my fictional release is. For something left of field, visit Spruik for some random polls. And of course, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and all of the above would be absolutely phenomenal. For those of you who are interested, we do have scholarships available on AMA International, as well as options to work with me exclusively to optimize your performance and to nudge you closer towards that top 10 tennis ranking and or Grand Slam success, that elusive potential maiden Grand Slam, and or to achieve replicated success. So don't be shy, come and say hi. On that note, thank you so much for listening. I am so incredibly grateful. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.